Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here along with Monsters Review.
Hello.
And welcome back to the recast. On today's show, we have two Spielberg-produced, zany to the max cartoons that are parodying Star Wars, and we're gonna compare them. We also have quite a bit of news this week. I don't know, is it that time? Is like late October, early November, that magical time when all this animation news happens?
I guess so.
I mean, really, if you stretch it far enough, anything is animation news. I mean, like last week we were talking about like tweets and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, be like, Monsters, we got nothing for this week. Why don't you tweet out that you heard that there's a rumor that there's going to be like an Ed, Edd n Eddy reboot or something, and then we can cover that on the recast. But no, we do actually have a lot of news to talk about. A lot of reboots, a lot of interesting stuff. Got a pretty good question, and otherwise we got a pretty low key episode, but still should be a pretty good episode.
Right.
And actually, on that note, I wanted to talk about. Please leave in the comments or let us know in the suggestions, feedback section on the Discord server. Link down in the description. If you are okay with the 2-hour episodes, or if you would much rather us stick to an hour and 15 to an hour and 45, because our past like 3 episodes have been 2 hours long. Not by any intentional thing. Like, we just kind of didn't limit ourselves. We just talked, and the guest talked, and we did our thing, and then it just ended up being 2 hours. So I'm okay with that. Are you all right with that, Monsters, if it's 2 hours? You're the one editing.
Yeah, no, they take a little bit longer to edit, but, not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. We're all right with it, but we want to know what you guys think. I mean, if that's, like, pushing it, we can kind of, like, rein it in a little bit. We're going to try to, like, be a little bit better about that, at least in terms of, like, we're definitely only going to do 1 question a week unless, like, if there's, like, a no news week or a light news week, maybe we'll do 2, but we'll try to, like, rein it in a little bit. We definitely don't want to be pushing any further than about, like, 2 hours. So yeah, let us know down in the description what your opinion on that is. Monsters, I hear that you have a very special experience going on with Reanimated and Out of Jimmy's Head in your real life.
Yeah, so this is this was the last thing I thought that was going to result from me rewatching Reanimated and Out of Jimmy's Head.
Monster's got a concussion and now he sees cartoon characters. All right, I just wanted to get it out there.
No, out of my head.
Seriously.
Out of Monster's head, coming soon. No. But, so, just in general discourse and regular conversation, people often bring up names, right? So sometimes I've just casually heard their name, Nancy, being brought up. Now, I think that I've been traumatized by Reanimated because whenever I hear the name Nancy, I can't help but immediately think Yancey, which is the name of Jimmy's alien sister. And I'm afraid that if I was to say the word Nancy, see, it's already happening to me. I'm afraid that if I was to say the word or the name Nancy in response to someone saying the word Nancy, then I'd say Yancey. I don't know why. That's like that's what my brain is defaulting to. It's like, yeah, Nancy's not a name. It's obviously Yancey.
Yes, because Yancey's the more realistic plausibility there. What was President Bush's wife's name again?
Yancey Bush.
Yeah, right. Of course, her.
Yeah. Yancey Brown, voice of Mr. Krabs.
Right. I don't think his name is Nancy, but it does rhyme. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's only you, Monsters. Well, I'll be sure that we have a Nancy on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, so I can just say Yancey all day.
Right, of course.
So how have you been doing?
I've been all right. I'm busy. So last week I put out, or actually a little bit before last week's episode, I put out a video about Mystery Incorporated, and people have responded. I'm not going to actually respond to any individual comment because generally speaking, like, most of the comments have kind of been saying one thing. Not most of them. Some people are like, yeah, I agree with you, Pieguy. Like, this relationship stuff kept me from getting into the show. Whatever. But the general overwhelming consensus from what I hear is that season 2 does away with the relationship stuff about after like episode 5 or whatever, and the overarching mystery gets a lot more intense and a lot more involved. So like the 2 biggest criticisms I had in that video were are like the one thing was improved upon, and then the other thing is like non-existent. And people want me to check out season 2. And I don't know, man. It's like first of all, the video is not a review of Mystery Incorporated. The word review is not in the title. It's not in the description. It's not anywhere used in the video. So I don't know why people like I had someone like call me out and being like, oh, it's not fair that you gave a review of this without seeing season 2. And it's like, no, the video is about asking how subversive is Mystery Inc. compared to other Scooby Doo series. And from my analysis of season 1, I think it is like a little bit, but not too much. And again, I admit in the video I haven't seen a lot of season 2, but the thing is that like if the series is only 2 seasons long and the relationship stuff bleeds into at least like the first 2 episodes of season 2, that's over half the series that has that obnoxious stuff I don't like. Like, I'm not saying I'm never gonna give it another chance, but I think it's fair that after watching as much as I did to be turned away from it, and remember, people are going to watch it from season 1. No one's going to be like, yeah, I'm going to start this overarching mystery series on season 2. I think it's kind of fair for me to say what I said there. So will I check out season 2? Possibly at some time. And then if I did, I'd probably make a video like, does season 2 improve upon season 1 or something like that. But I still feel like if over half the series is a certain way, it's fair for me to say that that's what the series is in general. And because even if they fix certain things, that doesn't mean that like it's an enjoyable ride to get there. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get you. And I feel like we were getting a lot of similar comments about when we covered TMNT 2012 on the recast. A lot of people were like, yeah, this is one of the first episodes, probably not one of the best to watch, but it gets better as the show goes on.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, I haven't seen other episodes of TMNT, so I have like that could just be an outlier. Like I don't think it's the same situation. If I had watched half of TMNT and I said, well, I don't like X, Y, and Z, then that's one thing. But yeah, no. So I just kind of wanted to say that it wasn't not a review of the whole series, and I also tell you what I have and have not seen of the series. This isn't like a deception. This isn't like a he didn't finish the game and he's giving a review or whatever.
Right.
Like, it's not a review. I mean, I don't know. People seem to think that like anytime you talk about anything, it's like a review. Like, here's a question, Monsters. Would you consider what we do on the recast and comparing the 2 episodes? Would you consider those reviews?
I mean, they're episode reviews. They're not series reviews.
Well, yeah. Well,
a review. I
don't know that I'd consider them reviews. I consider them discussions for certain. Reviews. I mean. Maybe.
I mean, just based off of a quick search, this definition of review is a formal assessment or examination of something with the possibility or intention of instituting change if necessary.
Formal? Is this formal?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I'm not.
It's
I'm not
kind of
saying
informal,
it isn't.
but,
right.
But at the same time, we're taking like we're basically looking back at it, kind of recapping it at first, and then critically analyzing it and looking back at it and talking about it.
You're not wrong.
We're kind of just examining it. So
it's up to debate. I'm just saying I do feel like the kind of like the term review has stretched to the point where like any talking about anything, like I wouldn't consider my like when I take I watch an episode and I do like a TV log, I wouldn't consider those reviews. I would consider those maybe like first looks or something like
yeah, like a first impressions.
Right, which is like I guess it's a form of review, but I wouldn't necessarily just be like, well, here's my review of this. I don't know.
Does this word work better? Does critique sound more like what you define it as?
Nah, critique sounds more formal.
You think so?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a snob. That's probably it. No, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's that. So yeah, maybe I'll watch Mystery Incorporated, maybe not. I don't have if something else comes on the Boomerang app that makes me want to get it, then I will.
Right.
But I mean, like I stuck it out through the first season despite the relationship stuff really, really getting on my nerves, and despite like it felt a lot like in watching that first season that I was only watching because I wanted to know what the actual like what was going on with the overarching mystery. It wasn't like I was in like a lot of the episodes, I felt like I wasn't enjoying the ride, but I'm like, well, I gotta keep watching this. I want to know what happens. But like knowing what happens only affects like 3 episodes in the end, like in the end of the first season. Like it's not an intertwined mystery. It's like here's one little hint about like this character is not what they seem, And then like 3 episodes later, Velma will finally confront said character and be like, "Hey, I found a clue about you." It's
Yeah.
not it's not yeah. But that's enough with Mr. Incorporated for this week. Yeah, so we're gonna actually push the what we watched segment to right before the episode discussion this week because what I have to say kind of ties into what the episodes we watched. So we're gonna go right into news. Monsters, you're green.
I am. And you know who else is?
Shrek.
Yep.
I was trying to think of I should have said the Jolly Green Giant.
Yeah.
Shrek. Okay, so no one ever really. I don't think anyone ever really thought the Shrek franchise was dead, right?
Well, they haven't made
Did
a
you?
movie in what, almost 10 years?
True, but like they've still done like Netflix holiday specials.
Yeah, and they've been doing
merchandise.
like the Puss in Boots stuff.
Right, and also it's like it's a meme and it's like it's popular, so like someone somewhere is like looking at that and rubbing their hands together,
Right.
thinking like, yes, you know what else is green? Money. No, so like I never thought. I mean, like Dormant certainly, but like Gone Forever, nah.
Nah.
And like a few years ago, there was this like talk of there's going to be another Shrek movie. It's coming back, and then there was rumors that it was canceled and like all this other stuff. But now we're hearing that it might get a reboot or it might just be another movie. It's a lot of the news we cover ends up being kind of like very loose information.
Yeah.
Which is fun because I think that gives us stuff to talk about. Like even if this never comes through,
It allows us to interpret it.
right? It's still interesting to discuss a hypothetical Shrek movie because you gotta talk about Shrek.
Right.
So yeah, so what they're saying is that they would never change the vocal performances, which is good. Like, cannot imagine anyone else's but Mike Myers as Shrek,
Right.
Eddie Murphy as Donkey, and also those stars, they ain't doing so well these days, so they could really use these roles.
Right.
So that's good, but then like the guy that's going to be heading this theoretically is saying the challenge for us has always been to find something that really does feel like it's not simply yet another film in a series of sequels. And then he goes on to say that's why they're thinking of like rebooting Shrek, and like that's like loosely said. It's not necessarily like they weren't like we're gonna wipe continuity and start from the beginning.
Well, is it that there's been 4 Shrek films, so is it that they feel that there's like already enough stories attached to this current iteration of Shrek?
Well, here's what's there's a tremendous amount of fun to be had in that world, but it's a high bar to find a story that's truly world. What? That doesn't grammar. You want to find something in the narrative that really feels like a departure. Okay, and like I get this, I do, because the last 2 Shrek movies are awful. They're really bad. They're like, it's like parodying fairy tales and like pop culture and like all that stuff is like that was big at that time, and then like it had gotten done to death, and then Shrek 3 and 4 came in and did like really bad versions of that. They felt like ripping off Shrek and Shrek 2 instead of like being as witty as those first 2 movies. So like I get it. Like I don't, you know what, if you want to wipe the franchise back to Shrek 2, get rid of the dronkies, get rid of like I don't know,
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Right. I mean, I say keep Puss in Boots, and since like Puss in Boots is included in this title and like included in the discussion here, I assume they would. Keep that. Keep Fiona as an ogre. Keep like don't erase the events of Shrek 2, please. That's the best one. But yeah, no, I don't understand. Like the Shrek universe is basically like a weird mishmash of fairy tales and pop culture. It's like you could do anything with that universe, really.
Right.
You don't need to strictly reboot it in the sense of like wiping everything. And I don't know. The article doesn't say that that's what they're gonna do, but the guy Chris Melandri, and he's the guy that made Despicable Me. He's the one that's overseeing their revival. Um, I would just say that, like, if you got to throw out what Shrek 3 and 4 did, I'm okay with that. But just don't throw out the first two. There's no reason to. Why?
Right.
Why would? Because, like, if they're gonna do that, then you know what they're gonna do. They're gonna do like an origin story again, and it's like, why? Do we need another origin for Shrek? Like,
We don't.
no. I mean,
I know first and foremost, the thing that they're probably focusing on reinventing at first is the art style. Like, I have a
Yeah.
strong feeling that they're going to overhaul that, perhaps make it a bit more cartoony.
that's fair.
Because
I mean,
this guy, Chris Melandandri, he's the head of Illumination Entertainment, and most of their films kind of have a very similar art style. So,
oh god, the minions are gonna be in Shrek.
little Shrek
Get
minions.
out of my swamp, banana.
Fiona and Shrek have kids, and they're all minions.
Oh no. Oh no. All right. Well, there's not much really to report here. The guy just kind of said a few things. Now, it does sound like they're at least somewhat serious about this. And like I said, it makes sense that they're gonna do something with the Shrek property. I think they will, regardless of who's doing it and what's going on. And, like, I think sooner or later there will be a Shrek 5 in one way or another. But yeah, I don't know. It might just be all just initial talks. That's what it sounds like it is. Don't take the fact that there's a news article written about it and the fact that the guy behind it saying it is like solid confirmation of anything. Because when you're in the beginning of the storytelling process, you're in the pre-production, very, very early pre-production. There's a number of directions that you could go in. Like, just because you say, like, oh, we're gonna reboot the franchise doesn't mean that that's what's ever gonna happen.
Right. There's been plenty of times where they announce a reboot and they don't happen.
Right, or announce a movie that doesn't get made, or they announce that it's not a reboot and then it is, or they're weird and confusing about it, like the Ghostbusters film.
It might be one of those things too, where they announce it and they test the waters to see how the reception is to it, and if it's lukewarm, then maybe they'll reconsider it. But if there's good reception and there's a lot of people reacting to it, then maybe that'll be like, okay, we'll go ahead with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, in interesting news, Boomerang, the streaming service, not the TV channel.
The one that I never shut up about.
Right. That, along with some other Turner properties like Final Space and Mike Tyson Mysteries, are coming to Verve, which is a streaming platform that we've mentioned a couple times. What do you think?
I think awesome, good, anything but the Boomerang itself. I mean, we've talked about Verve before and how it's neat because it's like a sampling of a lot of things.
Right. Now they've got Nick Splat, they've got Crunchyroll, they've got Frederator.
Maybe this is the future of online streaming. Maybe it's like, well, you have a hub that's got like a sampler, right? Like, that's like, here's like a rotating like 9 classic 90s Nick shows, and sometimes every month we'll take a few out, we'll put 1 or 2 in, but if you want the full experience, we've got our own streaming service over here, and you can subscribe to just that, or you can subscribe to Verve and you get a sample. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the key, is that we have this like Boomerang. I mean, I've always talked about just how the streaming service doesn't make sense, but maybe this makes sense, right? If you just want some of the more popular offerings on Boomerang, you get Verve, and then if you like that enough, then you go over to the full Boomerang package.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't see a way that this is a bad thing.
I do find it funny that they mentioned that Boomerang's library consists of over 3,200 titles, and then it says all of which will be headed to Verve.
All of which?
Yeah.
Really?
It says Boomerang is a Warner Media network that specializes in classic cartoons and features a library of over 3,200 titles, all of which will be headed to Verve when the Boomerang channel goes live on November 13th. Take that as you will.
Very interesting. Oh, and Funimation is out on Verve. Man, this streaming stuff is weird.
Yeah, no, for real.
It's complicated. I mean, I've always kind of said, like, the biggest thing with online streaming and why it will not become cable, if they stick to this, it's the cancel anytime. That's the big deal for me. as long as streaming services remember to cancel anytime. You don't lump me into like a stupid year package like usual cable will do for you. I think generally speaking, we're good. I know
Yeah.
people talk about like the flood of them, and there definitely is like an issue of oversaturation in the marketplace, certainly. But as long as you can cancel any time, at least that gives people that are dedicated enough and care enough like option to do that. Like subscribe to Boomerang for a month and then watch what you want and then be done with it. Subscribe to
Right.
Hulu, watch it for a month and then be done with it, and then come back later. Like you got to go and remember to do that, and they get you when you don't remember to do that. But I think that's kind of the big deal compared to just like a cable package, which is usually you're locked in for a year or half a year, or it's bundled with your phone or not your phone because no one has home phones, but it's bundled with your internet and you can't unbundle it, and there's like all this other stipulations.
Well, I mean, I think part of the appeal also comes from like in TV, there's all these different channels and it's so expensive, but like a few years back, everything was on Netflix. Netflix was $10 a month, and like you could just go to Netflix. But now there's this, spread of all of these different streaming services that are merging because people are like, oh, Netflix is doing so well, I want a cut of that. So they're all spreading across. Disney's doing their own, WB is doing their own. It's all spreading across, and I think it's going to cause a problem sometime because there aren't going to be people that subscribe to every single streaming service.
Right. But that's why I don't know. I kind of like, apparently Verve is bringing all this stuff on here, and this isn't what's happening, but I think, I don't know, my idea of like having something that's like a sampling of from as many different services and Netflix as possible, a hub that other services can use to put teaser content on there. And then to basically just advertise, right? Like,
right. I do like what Verve's doing. It's very a la carte.
Right. I think that's like, I don't know, that might be the way. And I will just say that the Netflix strategy of like, there's tons of stuff on Netflix like 5 years ago, completely unsustainable. No way that was ever going to last, regardless of how, like, you could say it's greedy that all these streaming services are popping up and everyone wants a slice of the pie. But like, it's unsustainable. Too good to be true. It's what it is. Like people, you give someone something and then you take it away, no matter how good that something was and how unsustainable it was, people are always going to complain. And
Movie Pass.
well, Movie Pass was also a scam at the end, but but yeah, no, I don't know. So yeah, good. I'm glad because although I don't really intend on subscribing to Boomerang again, maybe I will subscribe to Verve and then I'll watch the rest of Mr. Yank.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so that's cool. Moving right along. In other streaming news, Hulu gets Fox's big animated comedies. Not at all a surprise because, as we know, Disney owns Fox. Fox and Disney were like the two biggest owners of Hulu. I don't really know exactly the percentage now, but I know when Hulu was started, it was like a joint venture between a lot of these companies, and Fox and Disney were like two of the bigger ones in this joint. So now Hulu is mostly owned by Disney, if not completely owned by Disney. And it makes sense if Disney's doing their own streaming service, they don't want their adult content on there, but they want to put their adult content somewhere. So it makes complete sense to kind of make Hulu that, and then the Disney service can be the Disney service, mostly for kids.
Exactly. I mean, that's what they've always done because Disney, a lot of people fail to realize Disney's been making adult movies for such a long time. But they don't brand them as Disney movies. They brand them as like Touchstone or Buena Vista Pictures.
Did you know that Touchstone logo, if you like squint and tilt your head sideways, it's actually a Mickey Mouse?
Really? I did not know that.
Yep. Try it at home, kids. It's it's like a smeared Mickey Mouse. It's there, I'm telling you. But yeah.
Right. So instead of King of the Hill and Family Guy being on Disney now, they can be on Hulu.
Right, that makes sense. People are Hulu is a brand that's successful. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm naming streaming services, Hulu is always the second one I name.
Right, almost everybody I know has Hulu. I mean, more people I know have Netflix, but a lot of people I know also have Hulu.
Yeah, I mean it's Netflix, Hulu, and then Amazon, but Amazon's also kind of its own category because Amazon,
that just comes with Prime. Yeah,
right. It's one of many sectors of Prime, so it's but like yeah. So that's really cool. I'm super happy to see King of the Hill on there. That's a show that had a streaming presence and then it didn't, and then Adult Swim had it like some episodes up, and then it was like not anywhere on streaming, and now it's all there on Hulu, ad free if you have Hulu, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Also, Cleveland show's there, so maybe unsubscribe from Hulu. No, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
According to the article as well, Hulu apparently has 20 million subscribers, which is not a number to sneeze at.
Right. No, that's pretty big.
Also cool to have Futurama on there. I don't know.
That's where I always watch it.
Okay.
It used to be on Netflix, but now it's they have everything on Hulu. And I think that there still is some early episodes of Futurama on Netflix, but not much.
I'm gonna fact check you right here.
Like with Family Guy, I'm pretty sure they only have like the first run before it got revived on there.
Futurama is no longer on Netflix.
So maybe they did entirely remove it.
You can watch Disenchantment. That's the first thing that came up, unsurprisingly. You can also watch Big Mouth, which is the third thing that came up. The second thing, BoJack. So just watch that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move along. That's good news or bad?
You thought we were done with the news.
No.
More.
News just doesn't end, and it's more streaming news. Netflix. So Netflix has animation.
Yep.
Netflix now is going to have even more animation, and basically they put out this like little teaser thing, which like I love this. I love the way they did this, because instead of just being like, yeah, we got new shows coming out, basically what they did was they have 6 new shows, and they took the creative minds behind these 6 shows, highlighted them, let them speak in a little teaser trailer thing, and highlighted what these people have worked on. It's all highly accredited works. Stuff from Inside Out to Gravity Falls to Powerpuff Girls. Like, that's great. I mean, right. I don't really want to get into the whole what was it even called? Guardian Spice Girls or whatever. High Guardian Spice. I don't want to get into that whole controversy, but I do want to say that like that, and also like, hey, Thundercats Roar, like other things that have been controversial. Look at the way Netflix did this trailer. Look at how they showed us without even showing a frame of animation. I mean of new animation or whatever. Like they showed us here's the ideas, here are the people behind them, and here is the citations to show you these people have done good things and are going to go on to do more good things. It's not a Thundercats like, hey guys, I really like Thundercats. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe that guy is an accredited writer, but the trailer didn't tell me that. The trailer was just like, Thundercats is cool, you guys. Like, you know what I mean? If you're gonna do a trailer that shows off the people that are creating the show, then show us what they've done. You know, like if they've done nothing, then that's not the trailer you want to go with. I'm not saying nobody's can't make good content, but like you don't advertise it like that.
Right.
You know, names sell, and you know, I see like you know, a guy popped up and I'm like, you know, who is this? I don't know. LT Gray. Okay, I watched that show. I liked that show. Cool. I'm sure he's gonna put out a good content in the future. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I thought that was a really bold way to advertise, and it makes sense. The way Netflix does things just makes sense.
Yeah. No, Netflix is very smart with how they market their shows, and I think they do a fantastic job. And I do believe that their push for animation is really good for the animation industry overall. Hopefully that they, you know, if they're on top, then they stay that way. And, you know, I think that there's a reason why they're doing so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Netflix could have, again, you know, I mentioned that it was unsustainable what happened a few years ago, and Netflix knew that. Netflix wouldn't have made original content if they thought that they would have like all of this content around forever. They knew that sooner or later these studios would want a slice, and they're gonna have to give them back their shows. Like they know that, so that's why they made original content. Honestly, if we are getting to a point where like there's enough originals on Netflix that are really dang good that I probably would have a Netflix subscription even if they didn't have a lot of the older shows as well. Like we're getting to that point. I mean, I know I'm an outlier because I you know, I watch a lot of TV. I watch a lot of like specialty TV. I know not everyone's in that place yet, but I feel like Netflix is gearing themselves up to do that. I don't think that they're gonna like intentionally dump all the old shows, but I do think that they're preparing themselves for if a time comes where like everyone wants their stuff back and no one wants to play ball, they'll still have things that are worth subscribing for.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Honestly, though, I'd subscribe. I would pretty much subscribe just for BoJack. Oh, I love BoJack. But yeah, we don't really have the time to go into like each and every one of these shows. Was there any one that really stuck out to you, Monsters?
Yeah, Craig McCracken's doing one called Kid Cosmic. That's slated to be released in 2020. It's funny when they in that teaser video that they had of him, they mentioned Powerpuff Girls and Fosters, but not Wander Over Yonder. Maybe just because that show isn't as recognizable. But the description says that it's about a young boy who dreams of becoming a hero, and when he stumbles across some cosmic stones of his power, his dreams appear to have come true. And then it's basically him coming to terms with being a hero versus imagining how he is as a hero.
Is this a Thanos origin story? Just like a backdoor, like the end of the series is just like he paints himself purple.
Right,
like,
yeah. He shaves his head, paints himself purple.
Yep, loses the stones. He's like, well, I gotta get him back.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So I remember Pieguy mentioning a little bit back that he was disappointed that there wasn't any sort of solid conclusion to the Scooby Doo and the 13 Ghosts.
Almost.
Yeah.
The 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo.
Yeah, the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo. The reason I said that is because I was reading the title of the new one, which is called Scooby Doo and the Curse of the 13th Ghost. You excited?
Yes. 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 I am. I mean, look, I haven't seen the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo in like a long time. So I don't know. Maybe it was a trash show. But like, I love this. I love it when movies and shows go back and like look at like where there is this foundation to build upon. You know what I mean? Like to instead of being like, let's just create something out of the blue, like working with something already existing, but like not just like to rehash it, you know, but instead to give it something new, like bring in the new, use the old, come up with something creative and do it. Like doing this with Vincent Van Gogh back and Flim Flam and the Scooby Gang as like jaded retired characters. Which, I mean, I know that's happened like 8 times in the Scooby Doo. Like that's the plot of the movie, the live action one. And that's also the plot of Zombie Island, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's not but like I don't know, just the idea that they're going to continue this and they're going to base it on that and they're going to have just these characters that I thought were pretty interesting characters. That's really cool, and it's also crazy because Vincent Van Gogh he appears in Mystery Incorporated, and also Flim Flam is referenced to now be in jail because pickpockets go to jail. But yeah, it's funny that that show referenced it and maybe like brought enough consciousness that like this exists to the current people who make Scooby-Doo that like that got passed along the chain and now they're doing this. But yeah, no, that's cool. I would much rather this than Scooby-Doo fights the WWE guys or Scooby-Doo in the 8th millionth time they fight a mummy or a yeti or whatever.
Yeah, and like from the trailer that they posted, it's a direct-to-DVD movie, so the animation isn't going to be the best. You can notice a little bit of motion tweening. But
it looked pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, no, the designs, I like the line art. Like I like the thin outlines, I like the character designs, and yeah, no, I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely something, should it come to the Verve Boomerang service that I may or may not own. Yeah. No, but yeah.
You have to watch Scooby-Doo meets the WWE first.
Or else I wouldn't understand the continuity when John Cena shows up.
Yep, and saves the Mystery Machine from falling off a cliff.
Right, as he does. Oh God, one of these days we're gonna do that on the recast. We're gonna do like the Flintstones meets WWE versus the Jetsons meeting WWE or whatever.
It'll be great because we know nothing about wrestling either.
I know that it's real and scary.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's move along to the question, and this one's a bit of a long one, so stick with me. This is from Norbert on our Discord server. He says, what do you guys think of people saying they're ditching a network? E.g., I'm ditching CN, they air too much TTG, or until they fix their business side, I'm boycotting Nickelodeon. Do you guys think that doing this is a good idea, or that it will actually make the networks change their ways as the people who do it are hoping for? Do you guys think that doing this is a good idea, or that it will actually make the networks change their ways as the people who do it are hoping for? Okay. Monsters, you go first.
I used to subscribe to that mentality of just, I'm angry at Cartoon Network for not showing my classic cartoons, or, I hate their Check-It era branding, so I'm just not going to watch them, and I hope that they will change their ways, and then I'll watch them again and give them my money and support. But, I mean, I don't think that way anymore, and I think, especially when I was doing that, it was very much in small numbers, because... I mean, I don't think a single person, maybe someday TV will get so drained out that one person will make a difference, but right now, one person won't make a difference in how Cartoon Network determines their programming.
You're so cynical, man.
I know.
That's yeah, okay, and one person voting doesn't make a difference in the election, except, it does en masse.
Well, that's different. That's apples to oranges.
No, it's not. It's if enough people do X thing, then, I mean, one person, like, literally does not matter, but in a series of a chain, it matters.
Unless you're a Nielsen family, then realistically, your viewing habits don't matter as much.
I mean, like, we live in an age that you don't have to ever watch the actual networks themselves. I mean, maybe this is kind of, like, avoiding the question because you're still possibly watching on a streaming service where it gets back to them, or maybe you're not, maybe you're pirating it, in which case then you're not supporting them at all.
Right. Well, also on a streaming service, let's say that you instead of watching Cartoon Network, the channel, you watch their stuff on Hulu. On Hulu, you can actually have accurate and real-time metrics of who's watching and what they're watching, whereas on TV it's mostly just, a smaller sample size with lots of estimates.
Let me put it this way. I do think that, yeah, unless there's this coordinated effort, it really most likely isn't going to make a difference. But I still think that if you personally feel, and I'm more on the side of, like, business practices with, in regards to a lot of the shadier stuff that Nickelodeon, allegedly went on behind the scenes, a lot of the screwing over of creators. Not telling them their shows are canceled when they're canceled, and, like, just a lot of that stuff I especially agree with. Not necessarily the, like, I'm gonna boycott because X show that I want to watch is not airing, but more on the, like, there's a legitimate industry problem here. Again, it's like, it'd be nice if there was a change, but if I were to do it, I'd be doing it because I personally don't believe in supporting X, Y, or Z thing because of that.
Yes.
But I mean, and it always it always depends on how you're going about it. Like, it's like if you're like whining, like, like, oh, I'm boycotting them because they don't, do what I want them to do. Like, that's gonna come off as a little bit childish. Even, I mean, you have a right to not watch something if you don't agree with the way they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's just, it depends on how you say it and the context and everything. But yeah, like, I mean, to be honest, though, we don't really need a coordinated effort because cable's dying anyway in terms of the channels. But as we stated, if you're watching it on, I mean, honestly, even if you're pirating it, I bet you they're looking at those numbers too in terms of. Why are you laughing? I think that's true.
I mean, I'm not sure how they would measure them, but maybe.
There's view counts, isn't it? Like YouTube, basically.
Well, I mean, a lot of people use Kiss Cartoon, but
does that not have that?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Anywho,
I'm not checking, but no, I'm pretty sure they show views and they have comment sections. So, like, they might be using that too, and using that as a metric of, okay, well, yes, we're not literally getting advertising money out of them, but that's still, there's still opinion leaders that are going to be in there that are going to spread the word of these shows, and therefore they make the advertisers happy. There's still people who might buy merchandise at Hot Topic or whatever. So Yeah,
I mean,
what I'm trying to say is that even if you're pirating these shows, there's still a chance that you're like supporting the network anyway. So I don't know if there is a way around this, like just to watch the shows you want to watch but not support the networks, because I mean ultimately if you completely boycott anyway, you're also hurting the people that, just creators who have done nothing wrong, and have no control over anything, and they're victims in the first place of these things that you're boycotting it for. So it's sucky. It's a big part of the suckiness of Hollywood and media, in that like you can't you can't say, you're boycotting X movie or you don't want to watch X movie because you don't know, maybe it is good. You have to see it still to know, and they get you there. And I don't know, it's unfortunate, and it's very hard to kind of root out a lot of the problems in the industry because there's so much complication to it, and because so many people obviously like entertainment that comes out of it, fairly enough, like because of the artists that we support, but like we don't support the practices of the owners, of the managers, of the stupid executives. So
think about this.
Yeah.
Like with Teen Titans Go, it's arguably one of the most popular shows on the network in terms of ratings. Yet, especially in our circle of the internet, we often.
That's it. Yep. No, continue.
Well, I was gonna say, especially in our circle of the internet, there's a lot of people saying, I hate Teen Titans Go. It's the reason I don't watch Cartoon Network. We needed season 6 of the original. I refuse to watch it. But like I said, I think that in the grand scheme of things, that mentality of not liking the show and boycotting it only represents a small fraction and minority of the overall audience, which Cartoon Network is looking at 6 to 11-year-olds, and that show does really well among that demographic.
Oh, I mean, listen, I'll be the first person to tell you that Teen Titans Go has a lot more fans than like the average person on the internet thinks.
Right.
But it's also lost some of that viewership, and Steven Universe has beaten it in quite a few numbers, and that show gets basically no airtime. So like you can say that to an extent, but to the extent that Teen Titans gets aired versus the numbers they're pulling in, that argument doesn't really make sense. Like, it does in the shallow way, but in the like, well, if you're going by what is actually going to bring in the most views to the network, it doesn't make sense to air Teen Titans Go for 24 hours over Thanksgiving. It doesn't make sense to air it for 48 hours over Christmas.
I mean, it's reliable. They know that it can get numbers. I mean, albeit not the biggest numbers, but it always pulls in numbers.
Well, I mean, everything always pulls in some number.
Right. Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying, and I don't entirely disagree, but I mean, we don't need to tell anyone that the network schedule is weird and kind of messed up. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter how popular Teen Titans Go is. The amount that it's shown is like bonkers. I mean, it's gotten a little better, I think, recently, but there's like this weird unfair distribution of shows, and I don't know. I mean, here's what I'll say is that just like, listen, if you personally want to not support like for whatever reason, like you have every right to not to do that. Like, just know that depending on how you say it, it might come off a certain way on the internet. Like, it might come off entitled if you're like demanding the network changes for you, instead of just being like, well, I don't like the way they're doing things, so I'm not watching. Like, which is fair. Everyone has a right to say that.
Right. No,
that's not entitlement. Like, no one. Get ready for this, people who have been following the Diablo Immortal news. No company is like entitled to your money and you're being a fan of it. No company is. You do not owe these companies anything. If the second you decide you don't want to watch these anything for any reason, you have a right to say, I'm not going to watch this anymore. But I will say, like, in terms of making a stand, it is really complicated, because the second you stop supporting these shows, you stop supporting creative people as well. That's always kind of how I've seen it, is just like, well, I don't want to pirate, because even though I know a lot of the money just goes to the overhead and the executives and everything, but for whatever royalties that the people who actually made the show get, I still feel like they deserve that, and I should do my part to give them that.
Right. No, I agree.
All right, but that's an interesting question.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's go into what we watched last week. Monsters, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't watch too much as usual, but I did watch a little bit of South Park. Not the new South Park. I still haven't had the time or really motivation to watch any new South Park just after not being satisfied with a lot of the recent seasons, but I've heard mixed things about it. But what I did watch was two episodes that are a bit older. I watched the episode Human Sentai Pad,
Of
which
course.
is that's a classic in my book, and also another classic in my book, The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs.
Oh no. Oh god.
So which one do you want me to start talking about?
I don't know, Monsters. How long do you want to spend editing this podcast?
All right.
Just keep it clean, friend.
I will.
Keep it
All
as
right.
clean as the tail.
Yeah.
Oh god. All right, yeah, talk about it. Well, actually, wait. Both of these episodes are really awful. They're not awful episodes. They're both actually really good episodes. It's just
They're just very, very inappropriate.
right. So Human Sentai iPad is. What did you think of it?
I mean, the reason why I watched it in particular is because it was always one of my favorites, watching when I was younger, but also it's the episode that they document making during the South Park 6 Days
48
to Air
hours, or yeah, 60,
Yeah.
6 days to air.
TV movie thing, which is I personally love that documentary. It's really good. But no, yeah, I like this episode. I think it starts off strong, but it kind of it doesn't deliver as it's not as strong as it was at the beginning towards the end. Like the whole thing with Cartman and his iPads is so funny at the beginning, with him and his mom in the Best Buy and everything.
And the Toshiba handy book.
Yeah. And then I think also like the part where Kyle gets abducted and kind of like the whole thing with him not reading over the terms of agreement or whatever. I think that was funny.
We can't get it to read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that episode is a very good example of like a nice healthy mix of like satire and still like a South Park story. Like they don't do episodes like that too much anymore. Like you generally don't see an episode about the four boys just kind of like experiencing a weird thing.
Right.
The Tale is also another episode that's basically that. Like all this season, for example, the only episode that's about the boys this past week's episode was kind of it was the first time Kenny said anything muffled or unmuffled in the entire season, and we're on like episode 8. So if that tells you anything. But no, both episodes are like kind of classic, like the boys go through an ordeal.
Right.
And it is a pretty good satire of like license agreements and how ridiculous they are.
Right. Both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly summarize the second episode I mentioned, it's basically where the boys get inspired to write this story, and it's super vulgar. It basically makes people puke upon reading portions of it, and then just going, "Oh my god, this is the best thing ever," and they feel like they'd get in trouble for saying that they were the ones who wrote it, so they say Butters wrote it, but the reception to it is so positive that they soon become jealous and try to convince people that they were the actual writers, whereas Butters is getting all of the attention for it.
And I mean that episode is about it's basically about interpretation. It's like the death of an author,
Right.
Like the whole paradigm of once an author puts out a work, is any interpretation of that work the correct interpretation simply because it's an interpretation? Like, is it up to the individual's interpretation, and then any interpretation is the correct interpretation? Or is it that the author had something in his head and that's the interpretation, regardless of what people get out of it? Like, that's not the real meaning.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting examination of that, because the boys wrote it with the only intention was just to write down the most foul words they can think of, but yet people are finding all of these hidden meanings out of it.
Right. I know. I just love that whole thing where, like, because I remember just, being a kid in English class, and,
Yep.
we'd read poetry, and it'd be really simple, not very complex, and the teacher would extrapolate all of these profound meanings from it. And then they later on go on to say, it's like, I'm not sure if the author intended these, but this is how I interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, which ultimately, hey, let me just say, I mean, I rolled my eyes at those as a kid, but I feel like I feel like at least what I've done on YouTube is like not too far off from that sort of thing. Like that line of thinking, even if it's not the correct interpretation, thinking about what things could possibly mean in works is very good for your critical thinking skills. Like you
Oh,
scoff at
very
it when you're
much.
in school, but it is a useful skill. And I mean, even beyond media analysis, just in anything, like being able to kind of read people and read statements and kind of extrapolate what the true meaning behind them is. It's a very useful skill.
Right. No, I agree.
But it's also funny when your teacher is like, oh, the bear was described as having a wounded paw, and wound, it rhymes with harpoon, and it's actually
It's an allegory for Moby Dick.
right. He was calling back, because the bear is the whale for
Yeah.
brother bear too. I don't know.
This needs to be a full story.
Yeah. Hey. But yeah, those are two good episodes.
Yeah, what'd you watch?
I actually, you reminded me, I did watch the South Park episode from last week. I've been watching them. I have to say only the first episode really like impressed me comedically. The first episode of the season was actually pretty solid. The rest of them have been really, really middling, unfortunately. Some of them
middling is better than bad.
right. I mean, some of them may be bad. The rest, but like some of them were boring. I honestly, I'll be on. Like, I didn't get the one with Butters and the Preacher. Like, I feel like there's some real world event that I just missed or something. Because otherwise, like watching that episode, if it doesn't mean anything, if it is just playing on the whole like preachers are inappropriate with young boys thing, that's a really boring episode with no point to it. But maybe there's something I missed. But no, I watched the Halloween episode, which is about all of these scooters randomly showing up in South Park, which is also probably a reference to something. I don't know what it is. Maybe
I think it's
Teslas.
a reference to especially in like Los Angeles. There's these startup tech companies that have basically been doing this thing where like they put scooters all around the city, and you scan like a QR code with your phone, and basically like you pay to use the scooter for short term stuff, and then people leave them all over the place, and it's kind of causing a mess.
Okay, so then yeah, that's what I would have assumed. But yeah, that's the episode is all these scooters just keep appearing out of nowhere. Mr. Mackey is bothered by them because he's got a car, and he keeps tripping on them, and everyone keeps tripping on them.
That's pretty funny.
And then also it escalates to I won't spoil everything, but it escalates to the kids want to trick or treat on these scooters, which means they can get more ground, so everyone needs to stock up on so much candy because there's going to be like this stampede apocalypse of all these kids on scooters.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's like a clever storyline that, like, even though I wasn't entirely sure if the scooter thing was real, I was still entertained by the story. It escalated very nicely. There was some pretty solid animation at the end with all the kids on scooters. Kenny's story in it is that he's too poor to have a phone, even though he had a tablet in that other episode. He's too poor to have a phone, so he can't participate in the scooters, so he's also trying to take them out with Mr. Mackey. It's pretty good. It's not going to be like an all-time favorite South Park episode, and it was still kind of light on jokes, but Kenny got to do something, and the story was very solidly entertaining.
That sounds slightly reminiscent of that episode where Timmy starts like that wagon Uber service.
Handy car?
Yeah, where everybody pulls up. It's like, Timmy.
I remember that episode more as a tie-in to Stick of Truth than as an actual episode.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of how I remember that whole like arc with the fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
But with this recent season of South Park, did they ditch the whole overarching storyline thing?
It's too early to tell because basically there are a few things that have carried over, but only as gags. So mostly just kind of like the way they did it the first season. They kind of sort of did it, where Randy was Lord, where like they'd reference like that they can't drink beer anymore. It's like gluten-free beer or whatever, like in other episodes. But basically, like if I had to guess, it's probably is going to be that because they kind of reference these things in the background, and right now it wouldn't be called. I wouldn't consider it like a serialized season, but it always comes to a big like grinding issue in like the last 2 or 3 episodes. That's always when they try to like pile on all of these story elements, and then it just ends up crashing, and then they don't resolve anything, and then they come back a year later and whatever, because that's
Right.
what happened last season. That Canada got nuked, but like, I don't know. I guess that story is not important enough to finish. What's going on with Trump Garrison? Again, I guess that's not important enough for them to finish the story. Whatever, fine, I'm over it. But yeah, I mean, from the looks of it, I definitely recommend the first episode, the episode about school shootings. But anyway, the things that I have watched that I really wanted to talk about were in preparation for this. As I mentioned before, I've been watching through Animaniacs, and I got to a pretty like landmark standout episode. And then also I watched the first episode of Tiny Toons because the episode we're going to talk about is the second episode, so I feel like might as well do that. So the Animaniacs episode I watched, it's basically the 4th of July episode. So all the segments are related to like founding fathers and America, and like it's weird because it's like kind of sort of educational. Like I feel like this is the sort of episode that like teachers would wheel in and like make kids watch on like, I don't know, some holiday or like, you know, President's Week or something.
Right.
Because so the segments are Yakko or Wacko sings about the states and their capitals. The Flame, which is it's like a lot of people remember this because basically it's a short that isn't comedy based in Animaniacs, which like the Rita and Runt stuff isn't always either, but yeah, it's like basically I think it's an adaptation of a story, but it's this flame on a candle is anthropomorphized as like a naive little boy, and some guys like taking him and walking him up the steps, and like the kids just like commenting on things around, and like how he's afraid of the dark, and oh no, it's getting a little windy, like I gotta be careful and hold on to the candlestick. It's really really charming. And then it turns out that spoilers for an episode that's like 15 years old, or sorry, like 25 years old. It turns out that he's the candle, and the guy carrying him is Thomas Jefferson. And he's writing the Declaration of Independence. And yeah, it's not funny, but it's not supposed to be. It's very charming, very very charming. Like at one point, the candle starts dancing, and then like the shadows of things in the room also dance with him. Like I don't know, it's a really neat piece of animation. I definitely recommend that. If nothing else from this episode, that's it's called The Flame, and it's really good. So that was cool. The capitals in the states, classic. Anytime one of the Warners sings about like listing things, I mean, like he's singing to an established like country tune, and he's just listing states and capitals, but it's still really catchy and fun and interesting. Another segment is a Chicken Boo segment, which I'll be honest with you, I don't like the Chicken Boo segments. Basically, the idea is that there's a giant chicken, and no one knows he's a giant chicken, and then someone finds out he's a giant chicken.
How profound.
Yeah, I'm not speaking metaphorically. He's not like someone calling Marty McFly a chicken. He's literally a chicken. Basically, he's Davy Crockett, and people are like, oh, he's great, and then someone's like, he's a chicken, and they're like, no, that's heresy, and then someone realizes he's a chicken. That's great. That's good comedy. I mean, listen, anime, they can't, not every segment can be great, but yeah, that one is like, no. And then, interestingly enough, there's a segment called Fourscore and Several Migraines Ago, where the Animaniacs help Abraham Lincoln write his speech for the address.
Yeah, the Gettysburg Address.
Which is weird because the Animaniacs are generally not very helpful. I mean, sometimes they inadvertently help the people they've been antagonizing at the end. But like, it's kind of funny because they're still as jokey and quippy and weird as they are, but they're like, they respect Abraham Lincoln. And I kind of found that like an interesting slight twist on the usual format, at least like where I am. And I'm only like 17 episodes into like a 99 episode run. So like I was kind of happy to see they subverted it. It's a shorter cartoon, but it was kind of cool to see them be as quippy as they were, but still like help Lincoln. There's also, interestingly enough, a Tiny Toons parody in there where they start singing the Tiny Toons song, and they're or no, they don't sing the Tiny Toons. I can't remember if they sing the song or not, but they pull out the like multicolored circle and they stand in front of it. I don't know. There's a lot of crossover between these two shows. So then leading into that, the first episode of Tiny Toons is a weird thing. Have you ever seen it, Monsters? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. Basically, like, have you ever seen Duck Amuck?
Yeah, of course. I love Duck
the,
Amuck.
the best Looney Tunes short, really. Yeah. Come at me, what's opera, Doc? No, but like, basically, it's the story of a writer who is demanded by a WB exec to make a series, and he gets frustrated and can't, and so, but he creates Buster and Babs, and then like he gives up, and then Buster and Babs create the rest of their show with the help of Bugs Bunny. It's not exactly typical for the show.
So it's like the origin story?
Yes, but it's like they're literally like on a writer's bench, like on an artist's table, like they hold, like they draw up the town that they live in, they draw up Acme Acres, and they hold a casting audition for like all their wacky characters. It's odd. And then they're like, well, Montana Max kicked us out of our show, Bugs help us, and Bugs is like, I'll do you one better, I'll be in your show. And he draws Acme University, and then he becomes a teacher. It's definitely a non-standard introduction to your show.
Right.
It's interesting. Like,
one thing I've always found odd about Tiny Toons is like, whenever I think about them, I don't imagine them being like preschool age, like baby Looney Tunes, but I also don't imagine them being college students.
They're canonically 14. It's not college, it's like high school. Okay. It's called Acme Lou, but it's more akin to a high school.
Right. I can see that.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's weird because it technically does introduce the characters in that it like literally is like, here's Hampton. He's a neat freak. He's kind of boring. He's the straight man, the sidekick. And then here's, I don't know, like here's Dodo. He's crazy. We're gonna throw him in Crazy Land. Like they literally introduce the characters, but I still don't feel like I got a great like glimpse of what the show is or like what is going to happen.
It's like Looney Tunes abridged.
I mean, okay, so here's the thing, and we can start. Before I get into it, I guess we'll announce the next 2 weeks' episodes before we start talking about the episodes of this week. Next week we have Keystone Motel and Mr. Greg from Steven Universe, and the week after that we got something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We have The Lion King, the Disney movie, the animated one, not the musical, not the live action one that's gonna happen. But we have The Lion King and The Lion King 1.5. This is an interesting case in that I'll save discussion for then, but this should be a very interesting comparison. I mean, I don't really expect The Lion King 1.5 to be better than The Lion King, but I haven't seen The Lion King in a while, so maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be an interesting comparison.
Right.
All right. So on to our discussion here. We're gonna start with Quack and the Quarks from Tiny Toons. Monsters, would you like to give us a description of this episode?
Sure. So basically, two aliens posing as transfer students come to Earth to recruit someone to save their planet from this evil villain named Duck Vader. And they end up by recruiting Plucky, but they soon realize that he's less mighty than they're told. So they basically go up there and deal with that, and then Babs, Buster, and Hampton follow them.
Yeah. And it's all a loose parody of Star Wars.
Right. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, aka
correct.
the original Star Wars.
Now, what I was about to say, I held my tongue. Okay. Watching Tiny Toons now, like when I was a kid, I watched more Tiny Toons than Animaniacs or Pinky and the Brain. I watched all three of them, but I mostly watched Tiny Toons. I think it was just like a time slot thing. There wasn't really, I didn't watch that much Animaniacs. I remember honestly watching Wacko's Wish more than anything else because that aired a lot on Cartoon Theater. Like as a kid, I was like, yeah, Tiny Toons is awesome. It's the best. As an adult, and tell me if this is just me, is like, and especially after watching the first episode, Tiny Toons is like, it's like this weird, like, it feels like fan fiction.
Yeah, no, it does.
It's like, well, okay, I got a bunny character, but like, no, he's like Bugs Bunny, but he's shorter and he's blue. And he's got a shirt and he's smart alecky. Yeah, but he's a different character. We got Porky Pig, but like he's a neat freak now. He's still a sidekick. And then we've got Daffy Duck, but he's green. Plucky is literally Daffy Duck. There's no difference. There's not a difference. I mean, at least with the rest of them, they tried to like differentiate him a little bit, but like,
right.
Plucky is Plucky. Dizzy is Taz. Montana Max is at least a different take. Like he's Yosemite Sam, but he's a rich person, that's different from Yosemite Sam. That's okay. And Elmira is also a very different take than Elmer Fudd in that instead of hunting, she just loves animals. That's a cute twist. Wouldn't want to pair her with Pinky the Brain, but sure.
Nope.
Maybe for one short, but no, but like a lot of the stuff, and especially with Plucky, it feels like fan fiction. It feels like this is, and like the whole like and the original Looney Tunes characters teach at a school. Like that's part of me thinks that's really cool, but another part of me is like, this is really lame. Like, why not just like, it's like they are afraid to do Looney Tunes because they know that they can't match it in quality, like to just do a Looney Tunes show, not the Looney Tunes show. So instead they were like, well, I don't know, make it for kids or something.
I really do dig the concept.
Mm.
Like of these new people trying to fulfill the roles of the Looney Tunes, while the Looney Tunes instruct them on how to do so at Acme University. But like
Looniversity,
yeah,
well,
Looniversity.
It's a good idea, but the way they so like I said, I saw that was the first episode. This is the second episode. This is a terrible second episode. This gives you no idea like what is happening in the series, because also, mind you, most episodes are 3 segments. They're not I mean, some of them are one long thing, but generally they're not. This episode is, which is a little like weird. I would never have made this the second episode. It's also a parody. Like, why would you have one of the first episodes of your series be like this whole plot reference? That feels like something that comes maybe a little bit later down the road once you've firmly established these characters.
Right, but I mean, most of the characterizations still stay the same. It's just only the plot that's Star Wars based.
True. But I'm just saying, like, like the school is in this, but like just so they can go into the archives and pull out Duck Dodgers' ship, which is cool. Like that's cool.
That is cool. Yeah.
Like that's like and of course while they're in there, they see like the Ark of the Covenant and like other references to things. But like, I don't know. I feel like this is a weird episode to be a second episode. I just got to get that out of the way. Like I don't know. I feel like maybe my biggest problem is with Plucky in that like they didn't try with him. Like
he's not a very compelling lead character for the episode.
Right. That's another thing. And the other characters don't do anything.
Mm-mm.
Like technically they do something. Technically they go and they find Plucky, but ultimately they don't do anything.
They just kind of witness it.
Buster chloroforms a bunch of people.
Yep.
Or like inverse chloroforms, because he puts the mask over, or the handkerchief over himself and then sprays the totally not chloroform gas.
Yeah.
So I mean, what did you think of this overall?
I mean, it was okay. Depending on how you view it, it borrows some things from Star Wars, but it very much is its own thing.
Right.
Like, they have plot references, they have, certain lines of dialogue that reference it, character designs and things like that, but it is still its own thing.
Right. I would say that this is an original story that heavily borrows iconography from Star Wars. I would say it does that more than anything else, because there's a bit about like the 2 exchange students that come. I mean, that's kind of like Leia sending a message, but that's not exactly it. And also he goes to a planet and he does these tests, and he's dressed like Luke Skywalker, but the tests he's doing aren't like anything to do with like Luke's training. And then also like these people that he's like helping, they're not like, at first I was like, are these like supposed to be Jar Jar aliens? But no, this is before that, so definitely not. I mean, I don't know. It is produced by Spielberg, so maybe he knew something that other people didn't. He's pretty close with George Lucas, so could you imagine? Yeah. No, but like there are definitely distinctly plot elements that are pretty far off from Star Wars. I wouldn't say this is a whole plot reference, but it does very heavily borrow at least iconography.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I feel roughly the same way. I didn't dislike watching this episode, but I mean, there's also it's a moral episode. Like, if I remember anything, it's also that Tiny Toons was not always the best with, like, it tried to do kind of morals and themes, but it was always very heavy-handed. Like this one, the theme, the idea is that Plucky at the beginning of the episode was exaggerating his report, and the reason he got involved in this whole thing is because he exaggerates to the exchange students how great he is at everything. And then he learns his lesson at the end. But it's not really, because he wasn't really punished. He got to have a cool outer space adventure.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if anything, it's like, yeah, boast about the stuff that you didn't do, and then you get to go have a cool adventure. But like, I don't know, that element to me didn't work. I didn't find that great. Another thing I didn't find particularly stunning was the animation.
Yeah.
Now, Tiny Toons is known for having some inconsistent animation at times, and I will say that the beginning of the episode is much worse than anything else. Foghorn Leghorn, okay, especially like all the characters, honestly, in like the classroom scene of this episode, it's like he's in like a Zelda CDI game with how much he's like jerking about and like twitching and like his arms are flailing while he's talking.
I sit.
Yeah, and it's like I know they're loony, and I know Foghorn's a pretty expressive character, but like I don't know, he's like his shape is like morphing as he talks. I swear he's gonna like pop close to the screen and be like, "My boy, Plucky, I say Plucky." Oh man. So I wasn't thrilled with that, but I mean, the rest of the episode's animation was like, it was fine. I wouldn't say it's anything fantastic. I mean, granted, it is for the time. This is, as we mentioned, the second episode, but this is also the first Spielberg produced cartoon, like the first of that kind of run of Warner Brothers cartoons. So it makes sense that it'd be a little rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I the biggest laugh I got out of this, like I did get a few laughs. The biggest one I got was the ship being Swiss cheese.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that. Right, because
Yeah.
the Star Destroyer it's shaped like a wedge, basically, in Star Wars. And they just cut to it and it's just got holes in it like it's Swiss cheese, which is just such a weird, like, random visual gag, but I had to laugh. And then, I don't know, this probably isn't an original line, but I also laughed at Plucky's, "You can lead a horse to water, but a pencil must be lead."
Yeah.
Like,
I laughed at there was one line where they said, "Speaking of garbage, who wrote today's script?"
yes. Oh
So,
man.
that was pretty
Which by
good.
the way, in the first episode, they imply that the characters themselves wrote a bunch of scripts. The conflict is that Montana Max steals all the scripts so he can have his own show. So there's like this kind of like meta joke with that not only are they insulting the actual writers, but it might also be like canonically he has a reason to say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this show breaks the fourth wall so many times. I mean, there's that part where they're not doing it, or no, this was in the sports complex where they're just acting like they're not doing anything, and then the director's like, okay, and action, and then they get back to finding out where Plucky went.
And they also talk about like how much Plucky is making for the episode. I'll be honest with you, I laughed at the scripts line, and none of the rest of that stuff played for me.
Right.
I mean, I do you feel differently?
No, yeah, no, I agree with you. One thing that I also did laugh at, not entirely for the way you might think, is so basically Babs, Buster, and Hampton find, like Pieguy mentioned, Duck Dodger's rocket ship in the archives, and that's what they take to go into space to find out where Plucky is. And there's this computer on the ship that they have to have it like analyze something, and then it starts having this giant laughing fit. And it's so I found it to be really obnoxious, but I kind of laughed at how obnoxious it was.
It's pretty absurd. He's laughing because the feather, Plucky's feather, which is what they're using to track him, is tickling the robot.
Right.
That's what's happening and causing like the ship to fly out of control. Yeah.
And then he starts crying because they have onions.
Yep. That's Tiny Toons. Yeah. I would say, honestly, I thought this was okay. It got a few laughs out of me. pretty forgettable.
Right.
For a half-hour episode, it didn't really feel like that.
Yeah.
And then the Star Wars, like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I kind of like that they did a slightly original story. Like, I kind of like that because there's plenty of things out there that is just like a one-to-one parody of Star Wars. But at the same time, there were certain elements like Babs, Buster, and Hampton are dressed as Han, Leia, and R2D2 for no discernible reason other than reference.
Yeah, they don't act like those characters.
And it's not really a joke outside of just the visual gag or visual reference of them wearing the costume. They're not like, why are we wearing this? Like, or Plucky's not like, why do I have to be dressed up like a garbage can or whatever? Like, no one says anything. It's just like, well, we're in space. We might as well reference Star Wars.
Right.
But like I felt other references like the stormtroopers, like the duck mask stormtroopers. Those things look sick.
Yeah, they do.
I'd buy an action figure of those. The Darth Mallard,
Duck Vader.
Duck Vader, is that what he? What did you think of him?
I mean, I did find it somewhat amusing that he did have the duck voice with the deep voice. Like, he said, like, destroy planet Earth. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I mean, kind of in the way that I didn't think Plucky was a very good leading man. I didn't think that Duck Vader was that great of a villain either.
Right. Well, like, his design's all right. I didn't love it. Didn't hate it. But one of the big things is that there's no reveal with him. There's no, like, who is he? He has a wisp. Like he's Elmer Fudd. Like, I feel like there should be a reveal that he's like some classic Looney Tunes character. I mean, Marvin the Martian surprisingly doesn't show up in this episode.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming he was a duck because he spoke like it, and his helmet was shaped in that way.
Right. I'm saying it would have been a mislead.
Oh, yeah.
Like if Darth Mallard or Darth whatever like wasn't a duck,
Yeah.
It's Donald Duck. Or like, I mean, they could have like implied that. That would have been funny as well. But no, like that's part of the whole interesting thing about Darth Vader is this connection to the main character. And Darth Vader is what? No?
They don't mention the connection until the second movie, and this episode is a parody of the first movie.
Okay, I'm pretty sure the second movie had come out by the time this came out, dude.
Oh, but yeah, by a long shot. But
no, but I'm just saying that's one of the more interesting things about the character. That's the most interesting thing about him. There's other things, but like they don't do that, and he's not even like menacing. Like he shoots a finger gun. I don't understand. Like what is up with that? Is that a reference to something? Did 4Kids get to this episode?
Well, they do have like the stormtrooper blasters too that shoot like the lasers.
I don't think Darth Vader ever used a blaster.
No, I don't think he did.
I mean, maybe as a youngling.
Yeah. But I'm a giant Star Wars fan, and I just noticed some inaccuracies. So Darth Vader uses lightning, when in the movies Darth Vader doesn't have lightning powers. It's Darth Sidious that does.
True.
And then so the lasers that are supposed to destroy the planet are housed on the Star Destroyer, when in the movie they're on the Death Star.
Yeah. Surprisingly, also Death Star, like super iconic thing in Star Wars, you think would be referenced here, is not.
No, they did reference the USS Enterprise.
Right. There's the Star Trek
that was
theme
in the parking bay
too. Yeah.
And then also the line that they use is kind of the "May the Force be with you" is "Let the Force be your umbrella," which I'm not sure how that's supposed to be funny, just probably because of how random and lols it is. But but Plucky says it, and that's the two alien characters, Frank and Ollie, remember Plucky saying it when, and Plucky's supposed to be Luke Skywalker, when in the movies it's Luke Skywalker recalling Obi-Wan saying it.
Just for the record, I agree with you, comment section. I think he's nitpicking.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta adapt.
I take my Star Wars very seriously.
Well, you gotta distill when you're adapting into 22-minute
No,
parody.
yeah, I agree.
Like,
yeah.
I understand. I mean, it's a reference to it, even though there is no Obi-Wan in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, but yeah, I didn't get a strong sense of character out of any of these characters like, between the Star Wars or like the one-off characters and the main characters, I just didn't. Plucky, yes, Plucky is Daffy Duck, I get that, but like
Yeah.
I didn't get much.
Buster and
Buster,
Babs, they felt so bland.
yeah, Hampton doesn't. Hampton like has a he doesn't have much of a personality, but he has like some character traits. And here, I mean, he's like the one that gets captured. Like, I guess that's in line with his character, but like he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. And ultimately, the two alien characters save the day, which is like, I mean, that works in the sense that it's like, Plucky is not a hero, but it in the sense of like in this second episode of Tiny Toon Adventures, these two alien characters who I don't know if they appear again, but they don't seem like they're very important characters at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Like they get a decent amount of spotlight, and they're the ones that I feel maybe I got the most character out of, which is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it was awful. Got a few laughs. There is definitely like a menagerie of references as well. In that hangar bay, there's also like a TARDIS, and they play the Enterprise. They play the Star Trek theme when they're going through space, and so it's cute. But it definitely has some problems as a Tiny Toons episode. As a Star Wars parody, like we said, it's not a 1-to-1 parody, so I feel like judging it more as a Tiny Toons episode is like fair. Like like I feel like if it were more in line with Star Wars, maybe I could forgive it not being like the best in terms of establishing characters or whatever, but like it's a more loose parody, so you'd expect more from the Tiny Toons aspect that's just not quite prevalent, unfortunately.
I agree.
Okay, so moving on to Star Warners, which is so I will say before I go into the description, just that the interesting thing here is that Quack and the Quarks is the second episode of Tiny Toons. Star Warners is the last episode of Pinky and the Brain, which aired on the same day that the last episode of Animaniacs aired, which if you include like Yakko's Wish as like the last episode or the last thing of Animaniacs, Star Warners would be the second to last. And yes, there were things after Pinky and the Brain, with which crosses over these two shows, but this was basically the end of like good Spielberg produced Warner Brothers cartoons. Like this is basically the end. Tiny Toons was the beginning, so it is kind of interesting to see that comparison. I mean, I know it's not quote unquote a fair comparison, but that's the point of a comparison. We're pointing out what's different. We're not like saying like, well, the writers screwed up here and these writers are amazing, because there's a difference in time and there's a difference in experience between the two, and established things like animation studios and everything. Anyway, Star Warners, basically it's a Pinky and the Brain episode, but I still stand by the statement that it's an Animaniacs episode. It features all of the Animaniacs like recurring characters, all the main characters. Pinky and the Brain are in it. They get a little more focus. No, you know what? I would argue Pinky and the Brain get about as much focus as Yakko, Wacko, and Dot.
Really?
Yeah, I would argue that. Would you disagree?
I'd say that Pinky and the Brain get slightly more screen time.
What's more important at the climax?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I mean,
maybe
playing into Star Wars lore, it's like C-3PO and R2 aren't like important characters, but they're always there.
So what I'm saying, so what you're saying is that if this was like meant to be purely Pinky the Brain would be like, I don't know, Luke and Han.
That's perhaps.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that it's not Pinky and the Brain like heavy, because it is, but it's Animaniacs. It's about as Animaniacs as Yeah. So anyway, basically in this episode, all of the characters are reimagined as Star Wars characters. Pinky and the Brain are C-3PO and R2-D2. The Brain wants to what is he even? He's trying to get control of like the Empire, because if he does that, then he's the ruler. Basically, that's his scheme to take over the world this time.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all like this one, unlike a Quack and the Quarks, this one is a very, very direct like plot point to plot point reference to A New Hope, with the Yoda scene from
and the Jabba scene from Return of the Jedi.
Correct. But like in terms of what actual like that's only there because you have to have like Jabba and you have to have Yoda. Like that's basically the
those
reason
are in
why.
the middle, but it's pretty much just also the original Star Wars.
Right. So they Pinky and the Brain run into Wacko, who's Luke, on what's the name of the planet? Ratatouille. Which not a reference to the movie, but just a reference to the fact that Pinky and the Brain are rodents.
It sounds like Tatooine.
Right. It sounds like the name of a Star Wars planet. So they pick him up, and then they also pick up Slappy Wanna Nappy because she's rumor has it that she knows something, and Dot sent a message in Brain, and it's Star Wars. Star Wars. I don't need to explain Star Wars. All right. This episode is better.
So much better.
I feel like I feel like even for like Animaniacs, this is like a standout, really good episode. I feel bold enough to say that. I mean, there's a lot going on here, despite it being like a 1-to-1 kind of story. What they do with it is like it's so clever. I mean, aside from all the jokes, aside from all the references, like just the fact that like the plot is about Plots, who is the if you don't know, he's like the head of Warner Brothers in the Animaniacs cartoons. Like that's who he is. Yeah, he's also kind of an underwhelming Vader here, but like he at least is an established character in the canon of the show, and like it makes sense. And he's what do they call him?
Why did they change his name to that? His name is Thaddeus Plots, but then they changed it to Girth Plots.
It's a play on Darth, but he's fat. That's
why.
His
okay,
first
that
name
makes
isn't
sense.
But like the idea is that he doesn't understand comedy, which is just funny because it's like, there's backhanded references to the non-creatives at any animation studio, at any studio period, that he doesn't understand comedy, and he's trying to like remove comedy from the airwaves, and it's up to Yakko, who has studied in the art of comedy, to like sway him. Man. So like I really like what like the little changes they did add. I liked them. I felt like how they paired, how they tied things in. Having Pinky and the Brain be 3PO and R2D2 is not what I would have expected, but it makes so much sense because those are characters like they're seen as like utility character, or like they're there but they don't do a lot, which is like they're like they're lab rats basically. They're there but they're who cares, they can't do much. But then like in Star Wars they end up doing a decent amount, and in here they have kind of their own trajectory to their own story that runs parallel. Oh man, so I just the fact that they included like every character is pretty sick. I don't think they had Katie Kaboom, but otherwise all the characters I recognize, and then the pink hippo lady wasn't there, but they pretty much represented all the main stuff going on, and just how they did it, like the hippo being Jabba, the good feathers. Okay, the good feathers being
the stormtroopers.
Yeah, like okay, that's funny because that makes sense. But then. And this is how the episode opens up. I feel like this kind of gives it like example of how good this is. It opens up with a text crawl, which is like, how did a Quack and the Quarks miss that? Like, how do you parody Star Wars and not parody that? I don't know. Quack and Quarks did it. So like they open up with a comedic text scroll really fast, and then there's a Warner Brothers ship, because this shape, as we mentioned, the big wedge ship, the Imperial ship is what it's called.
The Star Destroyer.
Whatever. Like you see at the beginning of Star Wars, it's there, but it's the Warner Brothers logo. It like opens on that, and then we like immediately go to like inside the ship, and the good feathers are stormtroopers. They're shooting, and they're arguing as they're wont to do. Good feathers are one of my favorite skits in Animaniacs. I think they're pretty underrated. But they're arguing about who shot first, which is a reference that like you have to know Star Wars to know. I mean, it's it's gotten more play in like pop culture in general. I'm not saying like you have to be a true Star Wars fan to know this, but it's not an obvious reference to go with, especially not at that part of the story. Like just to jump in and be like, you did shoot first. Did you shoot first? Like. Yeah, we shot first. Like no, and they there's some good interplay there. Like I don't know. I feel like you open on that, and then it just you have Dot trying to use C-3PO brain as a vending machine, like. And then from there on out, there's this running gag where like no one knows what C-3PO is supposed to be as the brain. Like they call him a trash can, or they might not call him a trash can. They call him
the refrigerator,
a vending machine, a toaster, and then he calls himself a floor waxer. Like it's great. They also managed to like squeeze in everyone's catchphrase, like what does Mindy says, like I love you, bye bye.
Yeah.
Like they do all that. I found it a little weird that Hello Nurse was used on a toddler and then Dot. Kind of weird considering that catchphrase is usually associated with an attractive woman, but hey,
right.
you gotta squeeze it in somewhere, I guess. But yeah, and then like Slappy. Okay, also Slappy. I don't think she's criminally underrated, because I think she's the Slappy segments are probably, I would probably say they were about as popular as Pinky and the Brain. I'm kind of almost surprised she didn't get her own spinoff, because they're really good. Slappy as a character is a really funny character. This just kind of old cartoon character that's just grumpy and really witty. Really cool character, and to put her in the Obi-Wan role, but still have her just be Slappy, and that her name is Slappy Wanna Nappy. Come on, that's such good writing. I love it, and she's just like, she's perfect in this.
Right. Because she's a total contrarian to Obi-Wan in the movies, because he's this very wise, concerned, stoic mentor, and then she's just like, I don't really care.
Yeah, like they're both jaded, but like not, Slappy is just like an old lady who just stopped caring, like just speaks her mind all the time, whereas Obi-Wan's just kind of like, I don't know, he's living in a cave or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then oh my god, okay, what was the biggest laugh for you?
My biggest laugh was probably the one of the jokes in the cantina scene.
Okay.
So Slappy says, "My pitch. I told you we were gonna get a TV pilot."
They're looking for a pilot.
Yeah.
You completely butchered that, just so you know.
I know.
I'm sorry, Monsters. You're a good friend.
Hold on. Wait. So you say the joke.
Okay, the joke is they need a pilot, like they do in Star Wars. And so we cut inside the cantina. There's, of course, all the fanfare references, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we cut to Slappy talking to an alien, just about like, yeah, it's like I Love Lucy, but with an old squirrel. Like and then they're like, well, don't call us, we'll call you, the alien says. And then I believe like one of them goes up to her and is like, what are you doing? And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to get my pilot pitched. And then I can't deliver it as well as they do. I don't remember the exact line, but and then they're like, we need a space pilot. They're not like, all right, we're both bad at this, but my way made more sense. So anyway,
the correlation between pitches and pilots, and then that, TV pilots versus aviation pilots.
Right. I mean, it's funny enough that she's like in the cantina pitching, like it's just like it's literally, she calls it I Love Lucy, but with a squirrel. Like like that's just funny enough. And then you had to compound it with like pilot. Like the way they phrase the joke is really clever. My biggest laugh was just before that, the Mos Eisner cantina. Okay. And Slappy has a line about like the most wretched hive of scum and villainy. Like you have to have an agent to go in there, or so. Like I don't know. There's just a great line. Eisner he was running Disney.
Yeah, Michael Eisner.
He's very infamous because he's made a lot of like non-creative, like decisions that hampered creativity and maximized profits. He did do good things to the company, like he did help the company profit-wise, but he's very well known for being like a tightwad and being very much like against what kind of Walt stood for. What's especially funny, like that joke aged perfectly because Disney owns Star Wars. Disney did not own Star Wars at that time.
Right.
So that's just like really funny. Like, why are they dunking on Eisner here? I mean, aside from just like it's always fun to do that, and they dunk on a lot of things, but just like the fact that I'm sure it was random at the time. I mean, the name is kind of sort of like Mos Eisley, but like random at the time, beautiful now.
Yeah,
aged like a fine wine.
Yeah, yeah.
That whole cantina scene, as with like any good Star Wars parody, the cantina scene is really just phenomenal. There's references to so many things. Freakazoid is there playing the drums. Gotta squeeze him in there somehow. Yep. There's Marvin the Martian and his dog. There's
the Monstars from Space Jam.
No, really?
Yeah, they were sitting at the bar.
Get out! That's crazy.
Yeah. And then there's also a reference to Casablanca, which is right. a classic movie with Humphrey Bogart owning the bar in there and throwing them out.
Close ties to Star Wars franchise.
Yeah.
Oh man. And then they run into Yakko, who's Han, and
Yak Soho.
Yeah, Yak Soho. and
his sidekick Shu Boo Boo.
This is the best Chicken Boo appearance because they made a quick reference to that gag and then they moved on.
Yeah.
They weren't obnoxious. Just the names are funny too. And then he's a pizza delivery driver. Take that, Futurama. beat you to the punch on that one. And like he's got a thing about like he delivers in 30 minutes or less.
30 parsecs.
Sorry, yes, parsecs.
to Flappy the butt.
Flappy. Wait, was it Flabby or Flappy? I feel like it was Flabby.
Yeah. No, that's Flappy, what I said. Yeah.
Flappy the butt is also funny. That's a funny scene. Honestly, like it's not important to the story, but like it's so funny. I mean, it's Animaniacs, so nothing is important to the story ultimately. Like, yes, there are story beats in it, but like you could theoretically remove pretty much anything and it would still work because it's about the comedy. Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, they go to Flappy and
using the bicentennial lemon.
God, they had so much fun with the names. Yeah, and they're shooting pizza guns where they're like shooting pepperonis and cheese. And like Jabba's mad because they didn't deliver it on time, which is like, instead of like being smugglers, they're just pizza delivery guys that delivered it late. Like it's funny. It's so funny. And then also meanwhile they go to, what do they call him? The Yoda.
Dagobah?
Slappy's nephew.
Oh, Skipoda.
That's not even a pun. That's not even anything other than a portmanteau. But yeah, like he trains Yakko to like there's a good line about like drama is easy, comedy is hard.
He says you must not only focus on plots but also jokes because plots is the name of the villain.
Yes. Oh goodness. Oh, and there's also this is like another recurring theme across all of like the Spielberg shows is that much like there was a line about who wrote the script in Quack and the Quarks, Star Wars has early on Slappy says with the plot line that lame, we're all in trouble, right? when Dot is delivering her like help me, we're in trouble or I'm in trouble or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just oh god, her delivery on everything is always so perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Even the Ben Stein torturer alien is a reference. He's a character on the show. I don't know if he's a recurring character, but he's at least one victim of the Animaniacs.
Mm-hmm.
What else? But see here, this is why I say it's not so much picking the brain, because what are we talking about? Are we talking about picking the brain's plan, or are we talking about all the jokes? I'll be honest, like, I mean, Pinky the Brain, I'm not saying they don't get good jokes. Mainly the good joke with Brain is his is everyone thinking he's X, Y, or Z thing. But the bulk of the comedy doesn't even come from them.
No.
Like all the memorable parts, all the main parody of Star Wars, like all of it, and I'm not really saying this as an insult. I'm just trying to prove my point that it's an Animaniacs episode. You can put whatever title you want on it.
I just thought the not to get into comparisons, but the Tiny
No, we
Toons
can.
episode doesn't have any lightsabers, but this one has the comedy props like the hammers.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you parody Star Wars without lightsabers?
Yeah.
The Darth Mallard guy, like he has a lightsaber on his belt. Like I could see it, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna pull it out, and it's gonna be something. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought it was maybe like an anvil or something. Like I don't know. Or like a laser pointer joke. Like you could, there's a lot of jokes you can do with lightsabers. A lot of jokes have been done with lightsabers. But like, yeah, having them be mallets, and in the show, one of Wacko's signature things is that he has a mallet. That's like his thing. Little known Animaniacs trivia, not really, but but yeah, no, like that's clever. Also, I love how they do. You think they're gonna like kill Slappy or something, or well, there's a punchline coming, but they do the thing where it's Obi-Wan facing off against Darth Vader, but it's her and Plots. And it's they make it so that he was the one that got her show canceled, so it's like a personal stake, and she disappears, and like Wacko is thrown into like a fit of like no, how could you, and like he's fighting, and then she's just sitting on a table nearby reading Variety, like just super casually. I was kind of afraid that they would ditch her in the plot at some point. But no, she stays through the whole thing, and it's great.
Yeah. I mean, both episodes have a character that laughs because of being tickled.
that is a comparison right there.
Both have the end ceremony where they they get honored for their valiant effort.
Right. I mean, like, I guess they don't even parody it. It's just there.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that is a trope of Star Wars, not even just in A New Hope. But I would say that the lightsaber is more important. Like you gotta do that. I mean,
yeah,
like that. Like thinking about, okay, what are like the most iconic things about Star Wars? Like, okay, Darth Vader. Okay, they both have that. The Death Star. This one has the Death Star.
Yeah.
Quack of the Quarks does not have a Death Star. Lightsabers. This one has lightsabers. That one does not. Yoda. I mean, if you're just parodying A New Hope, I get that you might not include Yoda, but if you're leaving out lightsabers, maybe at least throw Yoda in. They do have they train Plucky. Like you think maybe a Yoda guy you could have just made one of the head aliens look like Yoda,
right?
Like why not reference that character? But yeah, so Star Warner's,
it's more faithful to Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's a lot funnier. It's better written. Like just the story moves along at a really nice pace, and even when there are scenes like with Flabby, like that don't really matter, it's still you're still entertained, and they don't last long. And ultimately, like you have the main Star Wars narrative, and you also have the Brains narrative to kind of go back and forth between. So it never really drags anywhere in the plot. You're always moving like to new locations in the Star Wars universe, and you're kind of they're like doing like a highlight reel of the first two Star Wars movies, basically. Not to imply that the best part of the second movie is only Yoda, but so yeah, I mean, what do you think? If nothing else, like taking away everything else, what would you prefer in an episode? Would you prefer an episode that like has parody elements but still kind of writes its own story, or would you rather something that goes full force with the parody, plot point by plot point?
It's a toss up, because I mean, as I mentioned before, I love Star Wars, and I it's such a classic story. It's especially with A New Hope, it's a perfect way to exemplify Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. But I mean, it does get old sometimes, and I mean, I appreciate that sometimes they try to put their own spin on it, but with a classic so iconic as Star Wars, it's hard to approve upon it.
Right. I mean, I guess it's like, yeah, I appreciate what a Quack and the Quarks was trying to do, but it almost does feel like it feels like they wanted to use like the Darth Vader thing and then everything else was kind of an afterthought. Honestly. Like
Mm-hmm.
because there's no lightsabers and the Plucky's journey is not it's not anything close to Luke's. A lot of like the other characters journeying to find Plucky that's no parallel to Star Wars, or at least not in the way they do it. The characters are in the costumes for no reason. Like it feels a little hollow and shallow as opposed to honestly, if it was just an original plot and then they had kind of Star Wars jokes thrown in, I feel like maybe that would have played better than just this kind of half-hearted. We're gonna steal a few elements and then we're gonna really like lamely reference others. Whereas this Star Wars at every turn takes an element of Star Wars and then makes a joke of it, which is that's Animaniacs for you. Every other line is a joke. They're not always funny jokes, but the punchlines keep rolling and rolling, and there's never like 3 lines in a row that are said seriously. There's always the Animaniacs always have a joke at the end, and to anytime anyone says anything. So I feel like I hate to say, I mean, I still have to watch through Tiny Toons. After I'm done with Animaniacs, I'll probably watch Pinky the Brain, but then I'll probably watch Tiny Toons. I still have to, but from what I've seen and what I remember, honestly, Animaniacs just kind of is the superior show. And I think a part of it is just timing. It's the show that came after the first one. It shared quite a bit of a voice cast who were, I mean, they were already professionals in the industry, but like the style of Animaniacs feels like a more refined style of Tiny Toons, basically, in a lot of ways. Like the comedy is sharper. The stories, like they don't worry as much about the story as much as they do just let's just be comedic. Let's just get it out there. Let's not have a cast of characters that all exist in like Acme Acres and we'll, focus like on just like different characters each episode, but instead let's have just this wide variety of insane characters and insane locations, and sometimes they'll all cross over, but a lot of times, the Goodfellas are in New York and the Animaniacs are in the studio, but sometimes they're in like 17th century Spain or whatever. Like, I don't know. I feel like Animaniacs is just an improvement on Tiny Toons, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Not to say that Tiny Toons doesn't offer, because I feel like it has that school setting. It has that a little closer tie to Looney Tunes, and it has its own thing. But yeah, I mean, these 2 episodes, it's pretty obvious that Star Wars is the better episode to me anyway.
Just everything from it being so meta, and the concept of WB coming after them, which that would not fly today, I don't think. I mean, rarely ever do you see that.
Well, Simpsons makes a lot of Fox jokes.
That is true. But yeah, just like the concept of them, learning the force of comedy and it being so meta, and all of the character names, like
right.
Wacko Skylicker, Flabby the Butt, Slappy Want a Nappy. Just all of those are so good. Also, just the sheer amount of pop culture references, not only in the cantina, but also, the torture guy mentioning Mark Hamill.
Right.
They referenced America Online, which is very much a thing of its time. They referenced the Yellow Brick Road from The Wizard of Oz on Tatooine.
That's that was a good Pinky joke, in that they're all talking about what they're gonna do. We're gonna save Dot, and then Brain's like, I'm gonna take over the world, and then Pinky's like, and I'm gonna find a brain, and then they just start skipping down the Yellow Brick Road.
They reference Seinfeld. They reference Ken Burns. They also reference, and this was a big one towards the end, but the Jetsons.
Right, very loosely, but yes.
Yeah. Watching TV.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a lot. I mean, honestly, it makes me watching Star Wars makes me excited for the Animaniacs reboot. Like, just a hope against hope that they could remain that sharp. It's a long shot, but if they could remain half as sharp as they were in this episode, I still think you'd have a pretty dang good series. And I think there aren't that many shows like Animaniacs or Tiny Toons out there anymore. For better or worse. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with more story-driven shows or 11-minute comedies. But like the idea, I mean, this is true of a lot of Animaniacs episodes, not this one, but a lot of them they're not 2 11-minute episodes. Sometimes they are. And they're also not 3 7-minute episodes. Sometimes they are. But sometimes they're 4 shorts. Sometimes they're 2 shorts. Sometimes they're 1. Sometimes they're like it's a more variety format that I feel like it enables the writers to have a lot more freedom and to be able to kind of just put the characters in any setting they want. You know, like you wouldn't see a SpongeBob episode where it's just the start of the episode and he's just in like 17th century Spain. Like you wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, there are episodes like Pest of the West, but like
the medieval one, the dragon one.
Right, Dungeons and Dragons, but they have to justify it in universe, and those are very, very few episodes.
Right.
So like you generally don't see cartoons like this anymore. You don't see this kind of, I don't know. I just feel like it's a style.
It all comes back to variety. There's so much going on, but and it's such a good way.
Right. I mean, it is like the reason I like early SpongeBob is that there is a variety of gags here, from referencing celebrities to referencing other Looney Tunes characters, to visual gags, to wordplay humor, to dirty jokes, to just like potty humor, to random humor. Like every form of humor is just kind of in there. And that like there's a lot of references, but it does the reference humor so well that even now when I'll watch an Animaniacs episode and I won't understand half the caricatures, but some of it still works even without understanding. Like all you have to do, there's a joke in this. Okay. What do they say about we need a big star? They say a big star and then they cut to some celebrity. I don't know who that is. And then they say we need a star it's a star that's going to blow up or like, I don't know. There's some insulting comment and then they cut back to that star. Who was that? Was that Barbara Streisand maybe?
I don't know.
I think maybe, but like the thing is, I don't need to know. I know it's a celebrity, and it's a dunk on that celebrity. I'm saying dunk a lot in this episode. Is that am I all right? Is everything is that a term? Am I using that correctly?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right. Throwing shade. There we go. That's what the kids are saying. Yeah.
Dishing tea.
Goodness.
It's just never have I ever seen a cartoon that's made. Because in a literal sense, in the 90s, WB Animation Studio, right? It's a place where people go to work and they make cartoons. But in this cartoon, they make it feel like such this lively, vibrant place. It's like, I want to go there. It's just this place where all this stuff is going on and...
Yeah. No, it's...
And that paired with the Kids WB block and all the other shows on it, too.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say... I found it very interesting that the end of the episode was, what are we going to do next millennium, brain? Because this is like, again, aside from Wacko's Wish, which is like a kind of a different thing. This is basically the last the brain's last scheme before the new millennium. And then he's going to come back in 2020 or whatever. So like literally, next millennium, they're going to be here. Funny.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not. Okay. Surprisingly, this episode is running very long. So I've got a quick trivia game for you, monsters.
Okay.
So the game is basically just I'm gonna say a fact, and you're gonna tell me whether it was from. This is a fact about Tiny Toons or Animaniacs. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So it has a banned episode about the characters drinking a bottle of beer and then dying.
I'm gonna say Animaniacs.
Tiny Toons.
Called
One Beer from the episode Elephant Issues. Plucky, Hampton, and Buster, the three of them share one beer. And then they get so drunk that they decide to drive a car off a cliff and die.
Wow. Lightweights. No, I'm joking.
No, I mean, like, listen, I have never drinking alcohol. I mean, I know it has very adverse effects on kids, but it is a little like exaggeratedly like PSA scare tactics to be like, a third of a beer is gonna, like, you're literally gonna die, like, right? Like, isn't that a little, maybe like a little exaggerate? Like, you can phrase this a little differently. Like, I get what they're trying to say. Like, hey, you know what? If you drink one, your judgment could be impaired enough that you do something stupid. That is absolutely true. But just the way they play it off is a little too sensationalist.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it is. But it's funny. It's really funny. Got banned. Was not on the Nickelodeon run. Unsurprisingly. All right. Number 2. So it had some season 1 episodes animated by the infamously horrible Kennedy Studios.
I'm gonna say Tiny Toon Adventures.
You would be correct on that one. The first episode is a Kennedy episode, and this episode I haven't checked, but it actually might be a Kennedy episode. And basically, they had to do a lot of retakes. Like the studio was really bad. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that opening bit at the classroom was done by them, and then everything else was like retakes or picked up by a different studio or something, because Kennedy like has a reputation for being very bad. Animaniacs also had a number of different studios doing helping, because both Animaniacs and Tiny Toons for the first season had like a 60 episode first season, like a very long first season. So they had to do a lot at once. But yeah. All right. You are 1 for 2. So question number 3. It featured a parody of Goodnight Moon with Jim Cummings as the narrator, basically doing his Winnie the Pooh voice.
Animaniacs.
You are correct. It's a part of the very first episode, or the first aired episode. You are 2 for 3. That's good. Okay, question 4. Had a few season-themed direct-to-video movies.
Animaniacs.
Tiny Toons. They had a spring break special and a What I Did on My Summer Vacation special. If you think the fact that they were in school, that makes a little more sense.
Right.
I don't know what like a summer themed Animaniacs special would be. Well, I mean, I don't know. All right. So you are 2 for 4. Come on, don't ruin that curve, man. That average. your recast GPA is plummeting. All right. Question number 5, or statement number 5. Had a character whose segments were outlawed because she was too sexy.
Animaniacs.
You are correct on that. That would be Minerva Mink segments.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
She was the slave Leia in this, appropriately enough. So yeah, her segments were outlawed, but they stopped them after 2, and then she like appeared in cameos, but they were like, all right, we can't be doing this.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the last question. So you're 3 for 5. You're doing all right. Last question. Initially, in its initial run when it was airing new episodes, it aired on both CBS and then Fox Kids.
Animaniacs.
Animaniacs never aired on CBS. Animaniacs started its run on Fox Kids and ended up on Kids WB.
Yeah.
This was Tiny Toons. 3 for 6, man.
I always get 50.
Yeah, there you go. Still technically failing.
Yep. As always.
Oh man. But yeah, there's some interesting facts to these shows, and I know there's definitely more that could be compared. I mean, there's a lot of similarities in writing style, in fourth wall jokes, in references to like old Looney Tunes characters, in just kind of the way the characters talk, even the way the animation. Because aside from Kennedy, I think all the other animation studios that did Tiny Toons also worked on Animaniacs. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot in common there. There's a lot of crossover. So yeah, maybe we'll revisit this in the future.
Sure.
But yeah, for now, PIEGUYRULZ out.
Catch you guys next time.